Hi, I am Dr. Sonali Garg. Today we'll be discussing inflation in the US. All right. So we had COVID-19. During COVID-19, during the pandemic, demand for goods and services fell drastically, right? People didn't have, people lost their jobs, they didn't have much money. Plus, those who did have a job and did have money, there were very few places to go and spend it. All right. At the same time, the supply of goods also fell. Now, the government, in an effort to make sure that demand did not fall too rapidly, the Federal Reserve, actually, acting on one of its mandates to try and keep the economy near full employment, actually first lowered interest rates a lot. What happens is when the interest rates gets lower, the way it is done is by increasing the money supply, and so that banks and money with banks goes up. They have more money to lend. They compete with each other. To find people to lend money to. Interest rates go down, and as a result of which, businesses find it easier to borrow, find it more profitable to borrow money as compared to before, because one of the costs, which is interest, has gone down. A lot of consumption spending is driven through credit cards, and those rates for those also go down. Buying houses also, other things being equal, the cost will go down when interest rates go down. All right. So the government did this quite a bit. A lot of money was pumped into the economy. People were also given checks, in order to help them with the expenses. As a result of which, so imagine in a room where there are 100, people, each of them, let's say, has $1, and there are 100 apples that are bought into the room. Everybody bids for apples. You would expect an apple to go for $1. Now, suppose everybody in the room gets $3, okay, and there's still the same number of apples. People will bid for them. You'd expect the price to go up to $3 an apple. So the same amount of goods and services there, but more money, so prices will go up. Now, this was done, specifically the decrease in interest rates and the giving of money was to make sure that the economy did not have a bigger fall in total output as it would have had without this stimulus. Okay, so this was done based on the fact that the pandemic had disrupted overall demand for goods and services. So that also contributed to inflation. Then, as the pandemic ended, and we try to get back to the way things were before, it was what came in on the forefront was the fact that a lot of goods are transported through the water route, right, through overseas and oceans by ship, and very often one of the ways to do it is through containers. And the containers had all accumulated on one side of the world as compared to another. They should be going back and forth, and there were disruptions in supply chain. And that also, a lot of goods, you had a long waiting list now. And so the prices went up for the goods that were available. For those units, the price went up. Overall, that price went up. Well, just as these things were getting fixed, the Ukraine-Russia conflict started, and the price of petrol went up. Okay. Now, petroleum or gas is an input. Transport is an input into pretty much everything. Either directly the price of gasoline, when you're consuming it as a consumer, it's one of the things that come into your consumption basket. Also, you yourself have to take yourself to work. That, and then most goods are transported through roads in America, for example. A lot of goods are transported through road, and the price of gasoline going up or petrol going up increases the cost of this. So that contributed to that. And then the Gaza-Israel situation also, conflict also contributed to further increase in price of oil and also overall prices. All right. Now, having said all this, what happened is one other thing happened. Okay, so one other thing happens. Okay, in order to keep the economy where it is, right, or to make sure that there's adequate demand in the economy, what governments do, okay, is everybody see this? Yeah. All right. So what governments often do is they try to encourage a little bit of unanticipated inflation. So what happens is, suppose you're look at for a particular entrepreneur, right? She's running a business and she hires workers for 60. You can think of it as 60,000. Whatever the unit is 60, rent is, let's say, 20, interest payments are 10, and she expects a profit of 10. The whole thing comes to 100. Okay. So these contracts are signed at the beginning of the year. They're typically for a year or longer rental agreements. Banks, charge interest for a year. You make up a deal that I'll pay this much over the year. And similarly, wages are negotiated for a year or longer sometimes. So what happens is, now let's say that you are buying maybe a chocolate, right? And maybe a chocolate is $1. So if you're getting $60, you're expected to buy 60 chocolates to be able to buy. Similarly, rent is 20. you'd expect with that money to be able to buy 20 chocolates. I'm talking about that is the real wage. Similarly, interest of 10, you'd expect to buy 10 chocolates with that. Profits are 10, you'd expect to buy 10 chocolates with that. That is just saying that you expected to be able to buy some goods and services with this money that you were getting. Now imagine during the year, there was unanticipated inflation, but nobody had predicted, and there was inflation of 2%. All right. Now, with that, what happens is the price of the good that you're selling, instead of being for 100, becomes 102. Now, this is fixed. This is fixed. This is fixed for the year. The only thing that goes up then is the profits of the entrepreneur. Instead of, so when they have a total, they're selling it for 102, 60 goes for wages, 20 goes for rent, 10 goes for interest. Now they're left with basically 12. So their profits go up by 20% actually, right? If they had a profit of 10 first, you add another 20%, that becomes 12. So what happens is entrepreneurs are encouraged to produce more and hire more people. So basically what happens is the government, when it feels that, it needs to stimulate the economy, it can, increase the money supply, and, it knows it will lead to some inflation, but they think that's okay because you have to trade off between either higher inflation or some inflation, and then reducing unemployment, right? So this is a step that governments take. Actually, the Federal Reserve in America, it takes this step, all right? So that is what happened, when the Federal Reserve actions took place. Now, let's take a look, okay? Now, what happens is, all this inflation has happened, right? So one of the things that is being said these days is, okay, now inflation has, plateaued off, or has become, the rate has decreased. But what happens is, the problem still remains. For people who are earning wages, what happens is, the price of goods has gone up, but your wages do not go up at the same time. Of course, over a period of, let's say, 50 years or 100 years, the wages will catch up, okay, to what they were, let's say, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. That's also a long time period. Most of us have heard one of our grandparents saying, how much did you spend on that? Oh my God, we used to run a house on that much, or that was our budget for food, for the whole month. And then you say, grandma or grandpa, you know what, but that time your salaries were also much lower. So, of course, over time, things will catch up. But the problem that exists is that when prices go up and when they're not anticipated, so if they were anticipated, they would be written into the rental or the wage or the interest contracts, right? But if they're not anticipated and they're large enough, it causes severe hardships to people whose payment, the wages, interest, rent do not go up automatically. Firstly, and they go up with a lag, or they may not go up unless they negotiate for it. So what is going through America right now is the economy, due to many actions that have been taken, and due to the Federal Reserve actions, employment is at near full employment or close to that. And at the same, but what has happened is the wages have not caught up. So what we see, so the people whose, their wages might have gone up a little bit, but they have not caught up in real terms, in terms of what you can buy with it. For example, if, your, all prices doubled, and at the same instant, your income also doubled, you'd be as well off as you were before. But what happens for many people is prices go up, but their payments do not go up at the same time. Maybe it is because they've written long-term contracts, or maybe because they don't have enough bargaining power, or because there was a lot of unemployment. And so, businesses are able to hire people without giving higher wages. Also, when you come out of a downturn, like the one we had during COVID, basically people are scared of losing their jobs. So they're willing to work for whatever wages they are, but that they are still finding it hard to make ends meet. So what needs to be done is to make sure that the people whose payments like wages, interest, rent, especially wages, have not been able to catch up. It is possible for them to catch up and negotiate. The negotiation power should go up, and this should once that happens, then people will feel that okay, we are in terms of real wages. That means what we could buy. So if let's say prices doubled and what you were getting paid, instead of getting paid 60, now you're getting paid 120, and things cost twice as much. A chocolate that cost $1 earlier, you could buy 60. Now chocolates cost $2 each, and you're getting $120. So you're again able to buy $60. So the main issue right now that a lot of Americans are facing is that maybe the wages have gone up a little bit, but they haven't gone up enough to to match the increase in prices. And this, so what will happen now is, given that the economy is now near full employment, lots more negotiations will happen. If the demands are not met, their requests, for higher wages are not met, there might be a lot more strikes and what I call industrial action in order to increase wages. And as if the full employment situation continues, and then the overall demand in the economy goes up even further, then what will happen is that business will then start competing for people who are already hired by somebody else, and then the payments for wages, etc., will go up. And that is what we are looking at, okay? But as of now, a lot of people, even though inflation may have plateaued out or come at a lower rate or is not that high, those people are still facing a lot of hardships. So that needs to be addressed. Another thing is that during this time, if you divide the market, the people into two, those who have substantial savings invested in the stock market versus those who don't. So the ones who have investment, and it's, I suppose, across the spectrum, well diversified, etc., the boom in the stock market has helped them, and so they feel better off. At the same time, there are people who are working hard, they keep hearing the economy is doing well, there's full employment, everything, but at the same time, they themselves are facing hardship. And this is because their wages will take time to catch up. And this is a process. So I think the next focus of the next, whatever should be, to, of course, lower prices by increasing competition, as discussed in another video, and also to make sure that in real terms, wages come back to what they were before, let's say, the inflation that happened, soon after COVID, okay, hit. That's it. Thank you.